Nice. So I'm going to talk about how to succeed with Matomo. And I noticed that I've been working with Matomo for almost 10 years now. So let's see what I have to share from those years of learning. But first, a little bit from our sponsors or from my employer. So I work for Digitalist, which is a company based in Sweden and Finland. We're about 70 employees and premium partner of Matomo. We can show a little bit. This is a little bit of our client base. This is mostly public sector in Sweden. We also work with some global large player companies, and we do a lot of Matomo for them. And our main service is a Matomo SaaS service. So you can basically run that in our local clusters, but we can talk more about that. As a company, we really love Matomo or open source. To be honest, it's been in our DNA for more than 15 years. So we've always been big contributors to the systems we use or the software we use. So, for example, for Matomo, we provide a lot of open source plugins. Probably used several of them. Some comments on these. Most of them are more from an infrastructural level, maybe. So it's about maintaining Matomo with quality. So, for instance, the plugins called User Console or Extra Tools are plugins that we developed because we wanted to run Matomo in the cloud, not only installing on servers. And I will talk a little bit later about it. So that's one example. We also share a lot of things, and we also have a Kubernetes setup for Matomo that we share as an open source. It's basically the one we're using for our own services, and we've been sharing this for at least 5 years. So I know a lot of organizations use it. There is also this Matomo console that is a console tool that adds more feature than just the standard console in Matomo to maintain websites. We also have a lot of premium solutions for Matomo. So one of them is our dashboard solution called Rebel Metrics, but we also have some tools that are only available in our SaaS, like a tool called the Engagement Tracker, a way to measure user behavior on the site. And we also have some more advanced tools for tag management and to help out to make the work easier. About myself, well, I've, as the presentation said, 10 years with Matomo and about 15 years with web analytics. And I think I've been working with the web more than 25 years, actually. So this has been my main focus in my career, actually. I'm an entrepreneur and I'm a partner of Digitalist Cloud, but I also, as I mentioned in the beginning, really an open source evangelist. So I've been heavily engaged in the Swedish Matomo community and now the global community, participating in conferences like this. I still write some code, but I also write board presentations. So try to stay on different levels of the organization. But let's skip to the topic of the day, and that's really how to succeed with Matomo, because I think I help a lot of organizations. Many of them are not using our Matomo, so I get in and I see a lot of the struggles and the issues people have with their installations, and this presentation is mainly going to focus on the issues I see and maybe the things you need to think about when you install Matomo. But before going into it, I really think, like, I love the software, I love Matomo, but I think the first thing you need to understand is that succeeding with Matomo is not about, installing it or just buying it. It's really a big project to succeed with Matomo, or more specifically, succeeding with analytics, where you own your data and getting data for your organization that you can make decisions on. but we'll look into more details. So let's build a Matomo house that is successful. And I think the foundations is really important, and it's easy to forget about it, but it's in the foundations, we need to be compliant and we need to be secure. With AI exploding into the internet, it sits in the hands of hackers and attackers and states, actors that want to get hold of your data. So keeping softwares like Matomo secure and compliant is key, because we're adding scripts to our apps or intranets or whatever, and if we are running Matomo without taking care, we actually risk letting bad actors into our systems, and this is really something I think a lot of people really don't understand how important it is to keep your Matomo instance secure. The next level is about, is Matomo functional, reliable, and usable? And we'll talk about the details later, but I really think this is things that are often missed. And then when we have the tool and it's functional and reliable, we can start implementing analytics on our sites and apps. And that means creating reports, etc. And if we do this correctly, we actually get the benefit of having a tools like Matomo. Then we actually get insights or business value for the organization. But if we skip the parts in the beginning, it's very common that we don't really get to that last step. So stay with me and I'll try to guide you through it. So what I also want to point out here is that some of these parts are about hosting. And hosting is not only installing it, running it, and taking backups. It's really about competence, about Matomo specifically. You can't host Matomo without knowing it, and I will explain why. The next step is about configuring the system or the software Matomo to adapt to your region, country. In EU, we have the GDPR, for instance. And again, this is a competence. You need to know it. You can't just install it and believe that the defaults will cover your organization's needs. And finally, doing analytics, like using the software, adopting it to your specific website, digging out the correct measurements so that you can make business decisions, is also a competence. But they are in 3 areas, and you need them all to really succeed with the house of Matomo. So let's look at the hosting parts. Well, I talked about compliance and security, and if we're talking about compliance, it's about having data in the right region. If you're looking at the EU region where I do most of my business, it's about GDPR, of course, and it's also getting into data sovereignty, but we'll talk more about that. But the next one is, of course, security. And security is not about softwares, it's all about routines and processes. And it's not really about the software Matomo in itself, because Matomo is secure at a certain time, but tomorrow it might be insecure. So keeping a software, and not only Matomo, secure, it's all about your processes and how fast you are to react to changes in the market or in the software. So security is not about the software, it's about your processes. Very important to understand this. So again, I work mostly in the EU, so I would like to talk about some core values that affects particularly the public sector, but also most companies or organizations within the EU. And those are data sovereignty, it's of course security, sustainability. I think it's something that should affect everyone, and then of course compliance. But let's look into them. So first of all, the data sovereignty is in the EU particularly a government in Sweden, and I would say that this is basically coming from every government I've talked to so far, that they are not willing to place their data in data centers outside of EU anymore, particularly when we talk about analytics, because you're basically letting these scripts run in the browsers of every visitor of your website or app. And if you're a governmental agency, that means basically they have access to the browsers of their visitors, but also to the data on the site. And that can be behind login or whatever. So people are really careful. And I think if you really understand how analytics software work, you should take more care. What we try to do at Digitalist is that when we're building solutions for Matomo, we're using 100% open source solutions. We're using data centers where we know who have access to the data, and there is absolutely no calls to third-party providers, not even for supervision. So we're not using any cloud solutions that have access to any data in the data centers. And this is all about, being able to stand up for data sovereignty and guaranteeing to the clients that we know where the data is. So that's the first part. Then security, of course. And as I said, it's all about the process. It's not really about the software. Things that you need to know with security is that it's all about scanning and monitoring and knowing when to update. And running Matomo on a server, it's not only about keeping Matomo updated, it's about keeping the server updated, or any software running on that server, or your router sitting in front on that server. That means that if you're not using modern cloud solutions, this will be a heavy burden because it's a lot of manual work and it's very easy to miss certain components or part. And the weakest chain will break, and that will leave your systems open. What we try to do, or what we can do, is that, if you don't know what it is, but read about SBOMs, or software bill of materials. This is actually going to be a requirement in the new laws in EU, that you should be able to provide this if you host Matomo for someone else, so that you can exactly specify what was running on your instance of Matomo at the exact point of time if something happens. So this is really a log of what the system was. Super important. So true cloud solutions will be much more easy to maintain. Then we come to compliance. We talk about GDPR, of course, in the EU, and most people know about this. One thing I think a lot of people miss is the sub-processor agreements. So if you're using a cloud provider like Microsoft, it's not really common knowledge from people that in Microsoft's sub-processor agreements, they actually allow parties from China and India in them. So if you really care about your data, you should really also care about the sub-processor agreements. So yeah, there are issues. Then we have the new laws in EU, NIS2 and CRA, or Cyber Resilience Act. There's also a EU SaaS certification coming up. If you look into this, it will be simply impossible to meet these requirements without running proper cloud solutions, because with proper cloud solutions, you can do proper scanning automation, and you can really be fast and react to the requirements that are there. And a lot of these requirements also will require that the vendors will have ISO certifications for quality and information security. So read more about that. And the final one is sustainability. I think it's super important that we care about Matomo, the software we use. So if you're purchasing that from someone, they should definitely contribute back to open source. That's a way for you as a buyer to know that you're like enriching the ecosystem you're using. Also make sure that they're using green energy. And again, modern cloud solutions saves energy. If they're using servers or VPS solutions, you can be pretty sure that they're consuming more energy And also US cloud providers usually do not use green energy. So yeah, maybe it's cheaper, but again, not good for the environment. Finally, I think if you're an EU government or company, also these US companies in many circumstances use tax paradises. So you're actually draining Europe from tax money when you use them. This is why they are cheaper. And also labor laws, unions, etc. is something you usually want to support if you're a public sector organization. So I think this sustainable perspective is also important. So like a short checklist if you're selecting a hosting provider. First of all, they have to use modern cloud solutions based on Kubernetes. It's like, as I mentioned before, the only way to stay secure and compliant, and it's also better for the environment. So you can make a decision. Selecting hosting providers with data centers, and you should do that with care. In Europe, you should definitely not go to the US. This is better for the environment, it's better uses of tax money, and it's better for humans. And finally, you should make sure that the vendor you use are contributing back to open source. First of all, that means they will have a better knowledge about the software. And it also means that you're future-proofing the software you're using. Next part will be configuring Matomo. So this was about making it functional, reliable, and usable. So functional means you don't have any bugs and that data collection works. Then reliable means that the interface is performant and it's up and available enough. And usable, the reports show all data. But let's dig into some more details. Like when I meet organizations that call me in to help them with their Matomo instances, these are some common issues. Data loss. And to be honest, it's not that uncommon, because tracking is often implemented without really knowing what's happening under the hood. Quite often, cookie managers or CORS issues, like when we're blocking requests, are actually disabling data collections. And if you have a partner or vendor that don't really know how this works, you will end up having less data than you should. Another issue that is very common is that maybe you add tracking to your websites, but you're running an SPA or a dynamic application like React or Angular. If you do so, there has been tons of seminars about this in the Matomo community, so there's definitely guidance. But it's very common still that you're not really collecting all the page views. And again, this is a knowledge that you need to have. Other things that are common is that the systems are very unstable. Many times I see that the team running Matomo is doing everything manually. They're just installing the software on the server, meaning it's very unstable. They don't really know what's running. They go in, log in, fix stuff on the servers, and it temporarily works. You should really maintain your Matomo installation in a repository so you know at every time what's running and what you changed and so on. Also, like looking into server logs. I don't know how many times I did this, and it's full of errors and no one ever looked at it. And usually it's quite easy to find things, but if you're not looking, you will not find it. Regarding reliability, these are some common issues I see. Reports are crashing, and often this is due to that people are not really tuning their databases. Another very common problem is that you're not running archiving from Chrome. It's running from the browser. Instability, as I said, again, manual deploys. Maybe you enable plugin updates through the interface. There is absolutely no way to roll back or do backups if something goes wrong. And even though Matomo is pretty stable, this is not a professional way to maintain a Matomo installation that is used by end users. Running on Windows, yeah, just bad practice. I would say that many organizations think it's smart because they already have Windows servers running. What you're doing when you're doing that is that you're selecting an environment that not many others are using. So when you run into problems, you're pretty much on your own. Instead of getting help from a community with thousands of users, you're down to maybe tens or hundreds. So be smart, use what others are using. And yeah, functionality breaks is pretty common. People are not touching the web servers, and there is basically no Matomo specific competence for hosting. So yeah, unable to solve problems when they appear. And then usable. Again, some of the more common issues I see. This is actually very common, but reports are not really working. And the main reason is that people haven't touched the global ini.php. For those of you who know Matomo, you know that you can change the amount of rows to display in a page view report, for instance. But if you see a lot of others in your report, that means that the people taking care of your Matomo server have not even touched the basics. And again, this is lack of competence, and you should really have that competence if you're reselling Matomo. Yeah, not showing all reports. Another problem that I often see is that we get bad data due to permissions. Things like adding segments or adding custom reports, because these are, of course, reports that are added to the interface that others can use, should only be given to people with knowledge. You should have at least gone to a Matomo training or have some basic knowledge before you give people access to create segments, because segments are very often used the wrong way. So it really requires some knowledge to use them. Yeah, and then of course not enough features. People are running Matomo without any premier features or adding plugins, not able to do custom reporting or maybe heat maps, or no dashboards are added. So yeah, and sometimes we need to do data manipulation, and this is something you might do in different ways, but not enough features, and the reason behind it is maybe lack of competence. So control questions in regards to configuring Matomo. Well, of course, you need to have competence about database performance. I would say that if you're buying Matomo from someone and they're not using automation, they're clicking in the interface, or they do updates or whatever through the interface, this is not professional, and you will run into problems sooner or later. So it's super important to disable all updates in the interface for professional delivery. Yeah, Matomo plus configuration in repositories. Also, there is more than 200 settings that you can change in the Matomo configuration file. So the defaults that you get when you just install Matomo is really for test driving it on a local computer. You really need to know what to change to make it usable. And again, the key is competence. Let's move over to the analytics part. So we talked about implementation. In this case, I mean setting up tracking, analytics, setting up reports and analyzing data, and then the insights, understanding data and being able to act on it. And to start with, to understand like the degree of maturity when you work with the data within your organization, it's important to understand that reporting is basically making data readable for humans. So if you create a table, what this usually does, it reads from a database and it presents the result in a table. And that basically means you're making the database tables readable for a human. The next step is analysis. So you can start looking at that data. Maybe you have page view data. So you have a table of your 10 most visited pages. Analysis starts when you see that data. But analysis doesn't mean you know something or you learn something, because then you get to insights. And a very common mistake is, for instance, saying that we have more page views on the start page. This is good, right? But doesn't necessarily mean good. It can actually mean bad. It depends on what type of traffic that led to, or what type of visits that led to more page views. And it also depends on the case with your specific site. So the insights is when you start to analyze the data and you come to insights that's maybe saying that, well, we got more page views, but that was actually due to a bad campaign. So even though we got more visits, it was actually bad, and the organization spent a lot of money on junk traffic, meaning we should actually change our campaigns and maybe drive more quality traffic to the site. So that's insight, and this is why you have analytics. So basically, the only value of creating a report is that we can start analyzing. The value of analyzing is that we might come to insights, but we don't necessarily have to come to an insight just because we do analytics. And sometimes we come to insights and then we can change something. And this is the whole idea about analytics. And when we find something and learn something, we can then adjust and then repeat the process of measuring again. So maybe we change the campaign and we start measuring and see that now we're reaching quality data instead of having crap traffic from a crap campaign. So going to implementation, I think it's super crucial to do planning before you do anything else. So start by looking into needs. Why do we have a tracking need on this particular website? This could be done in workshops. Some organization might already know why they're having a website. But the next step will be to create a measurement plan. We define metrics, target groups, goals, effect goals, events, etc. before we implement it. In a measurement plan, you should also define things that maybe you're not measuring in a tool like Matomo, because making good decisions means you need to look at both quality and quantity metrics. And this could mean that you need to do interviews, surveys, or something else, and those data are not necessarily always in Matomo. So a measurement plan needs to be bigger most of the times. After doing that, align with the stakeholders, make sure that what we plan to do is actually helping them. Then we go to implementation. And 99% of the time, you should use the tag manager. Why? Well, because 99% of the times, this is your best and easiest way to implement new tracking. And you usually want to implement events. The basics is sessions and page views, but usually you want to dig deeper into that, and the tag manager is a great resource. I will not go into details about that, but definitely what you should aim for. I also recommend you to look into dimensions from start. What type of dimensions are there that you can benefit from? And I think you should already plan for them and document them in the measurement plan. So example of dimensions can be user dimensions, like this is a customer, this is a person from this department, this is a you can come up with anything that is mapped to a visitor. Then we have action dimensions, and that could be something that is connected to an event or a page view. The most common thing would be a tag on a page, for instance, or maybe the author of a page, so that we can segment the reports based on these data and think of them from the beginning and implement them directly. The third one is the segments. Same thing here. You should plan and talk about the basic segments. You will always want to set up segments later on as well, but think about the main ones. Often they are based on dimensions. So set them up from the scratch, because segments will be filled with data from the beginning. So that's really a strong recommendation. Another thing I think a lot of organizations miss is the consent setup. You need to integrate Matomo with your content management platform. And my strong recommendation there is that you do that, you run without cookies until you have a consent, and then you set cookies for Matomo after you have a consent. I can guide you in that if you want more help. Just need to contact me. Yeah, and then we come to the analytics part. So setting up the site, you need to make sure that you have the right plugins. So adding segments, of course, but setting up custom reports is usually where I start, because usually you need that. It's a premium plugin. If you want to dig down into your data, this is really a crucial need. If you're purchasing one plugin for Matomo, it's custom reports. It's a must. The second thing would be to create specific dashboards for specific areas or target groups. It can be creating a specific dashboard with the custom reports you created for the editors or the marketers, or a specific area on the site. Really depends on the needs, but start with custom reports and then the dashboards. Also set up email reports for non-experienced users. I don't think you should let beginners into Matomo, and that really relates to that, it doesn't really help people to see data they don't understand. So make it easy, send easy to understand reports, and also send documentation to explain the reports. And even better is actually not to send reports and rather send insights when you find them. But this is more the mature version of an organization. I also think if you have a really mature organization, you need to have a third-party dashboard. And I'll show you an example of that. And if there's something you should do generally in life, it's to work iterative, but that goes for analytics as well. Never go for the big bang. Start small, increment, and learn. Most of the times, that big dream is not really what you need. But if you start with small things, you can solve problems, create quality, and then grow over time. And as I said, Matomo is not always enough, and I will talk a little bit about that. Because a lot of times you need to make more visualizations than possible in Matomo. And very often, in more advanced cases, you want to do data manipulation. So, and another thing is that we might want to display data from other data sources together with the Matomo data, particularly if we have users that are not that experienced. It might be wise to present them together. Manipulate data to make it understandable. A lot of times we get data from web analytics that can be numbers or pretty user-unfriendly data, and manipulating that to make it readable or understandable, or actually fixing problems even in your data is often a case in larger organizations. And we also need to have more power tools to segment and query our data if you have a lot of a lot of data, and if you want to dig down deeper to solve different issues and problems. And this is what limits in Matomo, and I think it's quite natural. And I want to talk a little bit about the alternatives, and one of them is of course Google Looker. I know a lot of people use it for Matomo, and it's great and easy, and it's quite easy to integrate it. But what you need to understand with Google Looker is that it's a little bit like putting lipstick on the cute animal, because what you're doing with that is that you're basically requesting the page view report, and you're getting that into Google Looker. And you can, the nice thing is that you can create a filter on it, or you can use the simple segments, and you can change the colors, but you can hardly manipulate anything, and you can't really add new data to it. So you can't combine, let's say, the page URL with some event data that you had before, or you just want to see page views from a particular user dimension or something like that. You will be limited because that data is simply not available in Google Looker, unless you create custom reports and then import them. But that's a really cumbersome challenge. And you can only filter on existing data. So what I want to show you is our tool Rebel Metrics that can really help you with this. So what that is a powerhouse for dashboards. So this is the example that we start by creating different charts. So in the next slide, I will show you how to create a chart in a short video. So you can basically go to the dataset Matomo, and you can click on a table visualization. And in this builder, you can then select all the possible fields that we have in the dataset. You can select different metrics. So we built up the metrics you have in Matomo, and you can do filters. So in this case, we import all the websites from the Matomo instance, and this happens all the time. So you can start visualizing data like this in a very easy way. And then you can, of course, quickly add filters to filter down page URLs from specific parts of the site. And the nice thing here is, like, if you do this with custom reports in Matomo, you know that you can only do it from today and forward, and then you can run server commands to process this back in time. But in Rebel Metrics, this will work on historical data directly. So it's super powerful. The next part is, let's see, it's dashboard. So dashboard is putting these charts together in a larger dashboard. So let's see how that works. So you can create a dashboard, and a dashboard gives you, so you can name it, and you can also just drag and drop the charts that are available. Rebel Metrics comes with about 40 pre-made charts for Matomo, so we already have a page views table. And the nice thing with this one is that you can see that you have an IX search, so you can search directly in the report. But you can also start modifying these reports and add your own filters. But the really nice thing with the dashboards in Rebel Metrics is that you can add your own filters. So end users can get filters on anything basically available, or any field in Matomo. You can predefine them and set them any way you want. So in this case, we're just adding a default site that we filter on. So yeah, it's super customizable. And then you publish them, and you can create charts and share them outside of Matomo as well. So the next part will be to look into data sets. So a data set is basically a database connection, but a data set can also be a spreadsheet, so that we can upload a spreadsheet from any data that we have in the organization and start visualizing that. But the cool thing I wanted to show you is that we can also create calculated or custom fields. So in this case, I'm making the page title lowercase. Maybe that's not the best use case, but a very common use case in Matomo is actually the page URL. If you're not making page URLs lowercase, you will actually have duplicate rows for the same URL, making your reporting almost impossible to read. So we can fix these things in Rebel Metrics. And in this case, you can just see the report here that you see that I use the field in my report called page title lowercase, and it's actually making all titles lowercase, but it's really simple to do these things with page URLs or anything else. And we can do really, really advanced stuff. I've done a blog post on sequential segmenting. So I could do an SQL query where I can ask for page views on a specific page, but only if the last page view was the start page. So I can do really, really advanced and cool stuff. But that's, and this is an example of a customer dashboard where we actually created a KPI, a real KPI. So you have the amount of visits that made an order. That's one of their main KPIs on this website. So we could actually create that within Rebel Metrics, and the way we do it in this case is that we calculated the number of events of a specific type, and then we divided it by number of visits. And you can do that with goals in Matomo, but the cool thing with Rebel Metrics is that we can do it on historical data. So we can actually do it even though you didn't have goals configured in Matomo. Yeah. Questions, and let's open up for discussion.
Thank you very much, Thomas. I'm currently having a look into the chat to see if there are questions. Of course, there are so many because it's currently 5 p.m. 42. So you can imagine that we got hundreds of questions and I have to pick up one out of those hundreds. So business as usual, I'm prepared mine. I already have 4 questions. They will turn around the topic, but maybe not about the topic in itself. So the first one that I, of course, feel free to answer, to not answer if you don't want to, but as a big agency, and you mentioned as well the word premium partners of Matomo, I would like to know what are the trends, what are the new trends that you are currently seeing on the markets when it comes to Matomo? I mean, are you currently seeing a trend where the user knocking at your door right now, or clients or prospects, are asking you something that they were not asking before?
Yeah, I think like the trend when we started with Matomo was that people were running away from Google Analytics because of GDPR. Those days are a little bit gone. So I think solutions like Rebel Metrics, people are asking for more skills and knowledge about actually doing analytics. And I think this is one of the main reasons why we created Rebel Metrics. And what we learned, or what we can experience with this tool in our hand, is that we can be extremely efficient with the Matomo data in a way that is have never been possible with Matomo before. So things that would have been required us to maybe write a plugin for Matomo, we can do in minutes with Rebel Metrics. So it really adds a superpower and make us really, really efficient with more advanced analytics tasks and challenges. I think this is where we're seeing the bigger growth, and we're actually releasing Rebel Metrics as an add-on to anyone running Matomo, because today you can only run it if you run Matomo with us, but we're actually opening up so that you can run Rebel Metrics from any Matomo instance in a couple of weeks. So we're in the testing phase of a plugin that integrates. So hopefully more people will have the ability to test run it pretty soon.
I'm not sure if I understood correctly. You mentioned creating plugins in minutes or seconds with Rebel Metrics. What is then a plugin for Rebel Metrics?
No. I said that advanced analytics questions
Okay.
previously required you to build a plugin to solve it in Matomo, but now we can do it directly in the interface of Rebel Metrics. And we can do it on historical data because, if you create a plugin for Matomo, usually you start collecting the data from the day you submit the plugin. But with Rebel Metrics, we can a lot of times actually dig into the historical data and actually come up with a lot of analytics. We can't, of course, create new data, but we can do a lot in terms of manipulating data and finding patterns in data. And we're actually looking into implementing more AI tools into it as well, because the data model we have in Rebel Metrics really is well suited for proper AI, not only generative AI, but really machine learning tasks.
Next question, because there is still no in the chat. What I'm seeing myself is like we get more and more people asking me, telling me that actually Matomo is way too technical for them. And when I look at your presentation, I've seen as well this word coming multiple times. Pieces of advice from you. How could Matomo, according to you, could be simpler? If you had one thing to simplify in Matomo, or at least what should be the main direction for simplicity, according to you, that Matomo should take?
Yeah, I think most of my presentation is putting the finger on the main issue with Matomo, and that I think like people is coming from the Google Analytics world, and then they move into Matomo, and they have the expectation that you can, as I said, just install it on a server, and then you have your product running with bells and whistles. But they miss the understanding of maintaining a system, and this is the key problem and why it's way too technical. It's not so much about the analytics; it's about lack of competence in configuring and setting it up, keeping it secure, keeping it performant, and this is the main challenge. It's way too many organizations that try on their own without competence.
Okay. Next question from myself as well. To you, what is the big thing missing in Matomo at the moment? I mean, I know that we already discussed the two of us, but I mean, the people watching us, they don't really know what have been between the discussion that we got. So I think it's just interesting to say it, let's say publicly, what is, according to you, the big missing feature in Matomo, which does not allow you to go to the next step?
Well, there is one thing missing that is available through premium plugins. So I would say custom reports is really something everyone running Matomo kind of needs. So I think that would be something, and I think really the whole community would benefit from it if we can do things like that without purchasing a plugin. And then the other one is maybe making things like the dashboards more user-friendly. Today, that's really not a user-friendly interface, and you should. I mean, if you can add some text and maybe do some easy filtering for widgets and so on, so I think that would help people a lot if that was easier. Like, if you create a dashboard, for instance, you can only copy it to a user. You can't really share it, and then I change the main version, and then it's updated for you. I need to make a new copy to use. I mean, there are some really technical problems with the way dashboards are built today. So I think making those things a little bit better. Then, of course, we can talk about like modern making things more modern, adding data types for data collections and so on. But I think those things are solvable. But if there is two things, it would be adding custom reports and easier dashboard that would solve like 80% of the of the challenges people have, I think.
Okay. Looking at the chat, I do not see any questions left, but I have one final one for you. This one is a bit pessimistic. Maybe I should keep it for myself, but let's play with the fire. Do you think, as it is, Matomo has a future? I mean, are you seeing right now some threats on the market which could definitely make Matomo a useless software? Of course, here talking about potential competitors of Matomo. I'm talking about AI or anything like this. Do you have the feeling that the threat have never been that close to Matomo, or do you think that there's clearly a place for Matomo within the next 5 years?
I definitely do. I think Matomo has a future. Matomo, as every other software project, needs to adopt to change faster, because this is what AI offers. So the question is maybe how can the Matomo community use AI smarter? And today, one of the problems is maybe that we have very few organizations that contribute to Matomo, and this is something I've talked about a lot. A lot of people are offering Matomo hosting or services, but they're not really contributing to the ecosystem around Matomo. And I think this is more of a problem than AI, because if we have more innovation going into the platform, and I mean, to be honest, it's really a need from everyone that we have open analytics where we can own our data. There are, of course, competitors in the open source world, and but I think like going in and contributions will help the platform survive. And I think also InnoCraft has a key part in that. My experience from successful open source softwares like Drupal is that for a platform and open source ecosystem to evolve properly, you have to invite more people, and you have to use more people to build the platform. And I think that there can be more done there in the Matomo ecosystem.
Thank you. Looking at the chat, there's no questions left. We still have 8 minutes before introducing our next speaker, Mike Arty, that I can see in the room. Is there any final questions that you would like to ask yourself that you would have expect the audience to ask you?
Yeah, maybe that's a question I would like to ask people. Is like if a company like us, Digitalist, as I said, we contribute with a lot of plugins and features and seminars around Matomo, but I would really like to hear like what would be your wish for our next contribution. So that's something. Maybe you know what you want, Ronan. Maybe you can answer it.
Let's see if the community will answer through the chat. So Evan is mentioning, thank you for mentioning Drupal as a successful open source project, 100% agree. From myself, what do I expect? Well, I'm going to have a conference about it later on, which is the partner network. Honestly, to me, all my wish is based on this given partner network, because what I can see right now is like there are many, let's say, companies out there who could play the role of a partner, but let's say few of them, maybe because they are too big, I've never heard about, let's say, what really is open source or what really is free software movement. They never heard about MatomoCamp. They probably do not even see an interest of coming on stage and explaining how they are using it. So typically, I think the growth for opportunities is huge in terms of what Digitalis could, let's say, bring more to the table I will say that, and it's not only for digitalists, but for me, for every producer of a plugin, InnoCraft included, of course, I think it's worth it to come on stage. I mean, that's the reason why I created another topic that we'll have just later about the Matomo feature for the database export. I'm kind of surprised to see that there's lots of features, lots of premium features, lots of, let's say, community plugins which have been developed, and there's no communication around it, which means like an even old community plugin, let's take, for example, the Campus JYP plugin. This one has been here for ages. It can, I think, show tremendous way of using Matomo in a different way. And the technology is here, but the communication around the product is not here. So people still don't know that it exists. They still don't know how they can contribute to it in order to improve it. And as a result, it's not helping. So I think, and you touch it with the finger, what we need is a bigger community, which is as well one of the reasons why we build up MatomoCamp, and I think we just need to stay alive and keep on going. And let's see if, thanks to the partner network, we get more. I think the more money there is, let's say, the more business there is, then the more attraction you get, then the more popularity you get. So that's going to be the bet for the next 2 years, I guess.
As you know, I've been involved in the Drupal community for a very long time, not so active anymore. Now I'm focused on Matomo. But what if there is one thing the Drupal community learned, and Dries talked about this a lot, it's about that the open source community has to value the givers, not the takers. And what it means is, like, if you're starting a partner network, you can't offer a place or attention to people that is only paying money. You have to give attentions to the people really contributing. This is key, because otherwise you will have just the marketing and no product growth at all. And just marketing will not take the product to the future.
Well, let's say that we have a security because the talk is recorded. So you can know that, Ronan, you remember on this given day, at this given time, and it was streamed on YouTube. So I heard you, Tomas.
Yeah, but you don't have to answer. But this is my strong opinion, and I know that it's been it's an issue if you can buy your way into an open source ecosystem without actually contributing. This is just damage.
Okay. Currently 5:58. I have to leave the floor to Mike Arti. So I would like to say thank you